Hey. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my brand new YouTube channel, Tash. Hi. You guys, this is the first time that I have done this. So can I just check that you can all hear me? If there's anybody out there, can you tell me if you can hear me? There's a little microphone thing here. Okay, I'm on. I just tested that. Excuse me while I just sort out my tech, you guys. First time. Oh, you can hear me. Hi, Laura. Hi, Suzanne. So you guys, this is the live launch of my YouTube channel. I am Cass, as you may know. Hey, Karen. I'm a psychologist, a coach, and a mindfulness meditation teacher. For anybody who doesn't know me or who might be watching this video later, is not familiar. And I host the Crappy to Happy podcast, and I write the Crappy to Happy books. Everybody always says the happy to crappy. That's not the way the books go. They're not the happy to crappy. They're the crappy to happy books and podcast. And so today's topic is about how to set boundaries without feeling guilty. This is a topic that comes up all of the time. The plan will be that there will be a new video every single Tuesday, and on a different topic to help you manage your mood, your mind, create momentum, build motivation, and really just create more magic, all the M words. So let's get into it. I don't know how many people will be here live, but it's great to see a few of you here. And feel free to type in the chat box as you go, and I'll try to answer questions along the way. So this is fun. So let's talk about, I've got to say all the stuff. Subscribe. I think somewhere down here you subscribe. So if you haven't done that, make sure you do that. Hit the bell to be notified of when I post new videos. And what else? Yes, so today is all about if you're a person who has trouble saying no, if you constantly feel that you're doing things that you don't really want to do, that people are in your space, or if you're a person who maybe kind of has trouble respecting other people's boundaries, there's that as well. So maintaining boundaries goes both ways, and so that's what we're here to talk about today. So if that sounds like you, hang in there and I'll hopefully give you some good tips and some good advice. All right, so what are we talking about when we talk about boundaries? Boundaries are essentially the limits that you set, which determine for you where the line is and what you consider to be acceptable when it comes to other people's behavior towards you or people's expectations of you, where the line, like a boundary is by definition marks a line, right? It marks a limit. So it's a limit to what you feel is acceptable or makes you feel safe in terms of your physical space, emotional space, psychological, just your time, your energy, everything. And so it's really fundamental to healthy relationships that you have healthy boundaries. Like having clear boundaries is really essential to a healthy relationship. And it's not just about you being clear about like your own boundaries and what is acceptable to you in terms of how you want to be treated by other people, but it's also about you knowing where you stop and somebody else begins, so that you're not taking on other people's issues, for want of a better word. So it's about you taking responsibility for your emotions, for your behaviors, for your time, for your space, for your energy, but also allowing other people to maintain responsibility for their own emotions, behaviors, time, energy, space. So I think there are some people who, we think about boundaries in terms of how it affects us. But if you tend to be a bit of a fixer, a rescuer, you take on other people's issues and you kind of almost become more interested in other people's issues than perhaps they are, then that's also another indication that there's a problem there with boundaries. Karen says, I feel rude when I try to assert myself. I actually think I'm being rude So how do I be assertive without being rude? Yes, we are definitely going to get to that, because that's where the guilt comes from, right? That's where people say, oh, but I get all this feeling of discomfort because I feel like I'm being rude or aggressive or impolite. And there's no need to feel that way. So we will get to that. We will get to that later. I'm glad that you brought that up, Karen. Okay, so you guys, I have got some notes here because this is not like pre-recorded. It's all live. So you will know you have difficulty setting boundaries if, I'm just going to run through a few kind of scenarios that might give you an indication that for you this is potentially an issue. And I'm sure, you know, most of us sort of know straight away if it's an issue. If you fairly consistently kind of deny your own feelings or dismiss your own needs or subjugate your own kind of preferences or opinions in order to make somebody else feel comfortable, to make sure that somebody else feels okay. You're willing to kind of make yourself feel less comfortable in order to prioritize somebody else's needs or opinions or preferences. Trouble saying no is the obvious one, like saying yes when you really mean no, when people ask things of you or want you to do things, or can you look after my kids, or can you stay back at work, or whatever it might be. Can you bake the cake for the office Christmas party, or whatever it is, having difficulty saying no and asserting yourself. The other one is like, do you find yourself feeling kind of angry or resentful towards other people? Or and sometimes this is a slow burn, sometimes it's a slow build. If you're consistently not saying no, if you're consistently not setting boundaries, then what can happen is you can kind of have this sort of bubbling resentment that builds under the surface. And it's an indication that you're having trouble with boundaries if you actually, you need to be like really pissed off. Like if you need to actually feel really angry and frustrated before you set a limit, instead of setting that limit way earlier before you reach that point. So if you know that you're kind of hitting breaking point and then you're just like slamming the door on people, well, that's an indication that you might have needed to set a boundary a little bit sooner. Hey, you guys. Hello everybody joining in. Doing favors for people, but then kind of really feeling a bit put upon or resentful about that. And as I said before, it goes both ways. So sometimes trying to fix other people, trying to rescue other people, taking responsibility for other people's problems or other people's emotions, or getting your sticky hands or emotions into other people's business, like getting too kind of enmeshed or entwined with another person. Yeah, or trying to change things or trying to fix things for other people. So trying to change other people's emotional responses, trying to manage things so that somebody else doesn't get upset, trying to kind of preempt other people's responses or reactions and managing things. So they're all boundary issues as well that you probably don't think about so often, but it's all of that kind of, it's essentially knowing where you end and where another person begins and making sure those things are clearly delineated. So you have your stuff over here, you've got your emotions, your behaviors, your limits. That person is responsible for their own, not you. So if you have answered yes to any of those things, type in the chat box if you answered yes to any of those things, then you want to probably do some work on learning how to manage those boundaries and learning how to be a bit more assertive without necessarily feeling guilty about that. So the first really important thing, obviously, is knowing where your boundaries are, like actually being very clear for yourself about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable for you. And that sounds really obvious, but if you're a person who has potentially grown up in an environment perhaps where your boundaries weren't respected, like if you had parents or if you have had people or partners in the past who haven't been respectful and haven't honored your boundaries or your decisions, or haven't, when you've said no, they haven't accepted that, then it can be hard. It can be hard to actually know and honor and respect your own boundaries. Boundary issues 100%, especially when trying to plan family events. Can you tell me more about that? Bartel23, I don't know what your first name is. Especially trying to plan family events. Tell me more about that, because we'll get to that and there'll be opportunity for answering questions later. So if you've grown up, or if you've had past experiences that have taught you that your boundaries aren't important, or that they're not valid, or they've just been minimized or dismissed or denied or considered irrelevant, then it might be really challenging for you. But it's really important that you start to do that you actually start to get very clear about what is acceptable to you and what is not acceptable to you. And it may well be that you do know what those boundaries are, you just have trouble articulating them or enforcing them with people. But if you're not clear, then you need to start to get clear. I think it's more tricky sometimes in things like the workplace, where there's, how much do you take on extra, or how much do you cover for other people and things like that. But obviously it's personal as well. It's emotional, it's energetic, it's your time, it's everything. So where is your boundary? Like, where does it lie? Definitely issue setting boundaries. Oh, Christy Bartel, of course. Always feel like my partner and I are always accommodating other family members to make them happy. Yes, so we can be pretty flexible with, I can't read the rest of that. So the other thing is, if you have trouble knowing where your boundaries are, then use your feelings as a guide. So it's really important to start checking in with yourself. Notice what makes you feel uncomfortable. Notice what makes you feel a bit resentful. Don't make yourself wrong for your feelings. Just kind of acknowledge and honor your own feelings. Checking in with your gut about what conversations leave you feeling a bit icky, because boundaries is also about not just the way people speak to you, but the way people speak generally around you. If there's topics of conversation, or if there's the way people speak even about other people that aren't acceptable to you and aren't in line with your values, then that can make you feel uncomfortable. That's another boundary. So checking in with yourself, what sort of conversations make you feel a bit off, what people leave you feeling drained and feeling depleted, what situations cause you to feel resentful and frustrated or angry, where do you feel not heard, not listened to, where do you feel taken advantage of or manipulated in some way. So just trusting your gut and being willing to honor that and see that as a reflection of, like, there's obviously been some sort of a boundary violation there with you and with whoever that person is. Now, the other thing, before we even go on with like enforcing those boundaries, I think the other important thing is taking responsibility. So if you have been unclear with setting boundaries, other people aren't mind readers. So if you have not been very clear that this is something that you don't like, that you don't want, that it's that it upsets you, that it bothers you in some way, if you've not expressed that, it's not fair, really. Like, you think, well, people should know. Well, they should know. People don't know. So if you've not been clear, I just want you to just, take some responsibility. We've all heard the saying, you teach people how to treat you. So to some degree, you have, by tolerating this behavior, you have reinforced this behavior. People will continue to behave and get their own needs met, even if that's not really in a way that it serves you or is in your best interest, if you're not clear with them that that's not acceptable to you. We can be pretty flexible with our plans and others aren't. So I end up feeling all the pressure to make ours happy without taking into account that what we're going to, okay. So it's accommodating, right? It's accommodating other people, and other people are less flexible because they're just doing what they want to do. And so then if you are the person who doesn't have the boundaries, you'll be all, we can do this and we can accommodate that. And what if we do this? And then you are the one who is left depleted and drained and frustrated and resentful. So if you have continued to behave this way, if you have not been clear and said no and been assertive about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable to you, then you have to take some responsibility for this pattern of behavior. So obviously going forward in new relationships, then it's really important to start as you mean to go on. In any new relationship, or a new work environment, a new friendship, a new whatever, new situation, then you want to start as you mean to go on. So start, once you've identified those boundaries, be very clear from the start about what's okay and what's not okay. And it's not about being rude, it's being polite, really. And it's just being clear in your communication. But the tricky thing will be in in current relationships, in past relationships, where people have really benefited from your lack of boundaries. And they do, right? People benefit from you being the flexible one, being the accommodating one. They benefit from you being always willing to lend a hand and do the favor and drop everything. And of course they do. So those people have got a vested interest in you not changing. So of course you're going to get some pushback. And so then the next thing is, well, how do you handle that? So that's what I want to talk a little bit about now. So Melinda said, I catch myself on this often. Melinda, do you mean you catch yourself with the responsibility thing or the mind reading thing? Because I think that's a really important point. We need to remember that we often assume that other people know, like that other people should know, like where we're at or what we want or what we don't want. And they don't. Like we're all just fairly, end of the day, we're all fairly kind of egocentric. We're all pretty preoccupied with our own issues and our own stuff and our own priorities and our own busyness and our own plans. And we're not always really thinking a lot about where other people are at or what else they're carrying or what else they've got on their plate. So sometimes these issues arise like completely accidentally. It's just because we haven't been clear. So we have to take responsibility. So there's that. So then, yeah, obviously new relationships, practicing, taking in that breath and saying no. If somebody asks you for something and it doesn't immediately feel comfortable to you, one really useful strategy is to buy some time. If you know you're a person who says yes when you mean no all of the time, and there's plenty of us out there, and I know I meet these people all the time, buy some time. Oh, okay, great. Well, I'll just have to check my calendar. I'll just have to check the family calendar. I will just need to see what else I've got going on. Like just buy some time if you know you're a person who will always say yes and then resent it afterwards, like then regret it afterwards. Don't get yourself into a situation where you have to come back and undo it. Try to pause and not get yourself into that situation in the first place by just buying some time, pausing before you give a response to something. Being resentful, Melinda says, but realizing I'm the one to give it away the flexibility and the boundary. Yes, exactly. We're the ones who agree to these things and then we feel resentful. And at the end of the day, like that's not actually kind. Like for us to say yes to something and then like harbor resentment towards the other person is really unkind. I'm reminded of Brene Brown's quote because I quote her like literally daily. Clear is kind, unclear is unkind. If you are not clear with people, you're not kind. And so it feels uncomfortable, it feels impolite, but it's actually the kindest thing that you can do is to be clear with somebody about what your expectations are and what's acceptable to you. And we all know, as much as it might be a bit of a sting sometimes if somebody says no to us, we actually prefer to know where we stand. Like people actually prefer to know where they stand. So the more that you can do that and just be clear, even if it feels uncomfortable, then actually, the better and the more healthy those relationships will be and the more respectful. Melinda says, my initial instinct is yes, so buying time is so helpful to really have a chance to weigh things up. It's a really useful strategy. And especially, do you know what, these days, most conversations are by text. It's a reflection of our, tech-addicted world, but we don't often pick up the phone anymore. We often message people. So we actually do have the time. We don't have to fire back straight away with the response. We can usually just, go back and say, oh, hey, sounds great, whatever, but I'll just need to check some things. Just need to see how that lines up. Yeah, Melinda, have to be clear with ourselves first. We have to know ourselves first. So the important thing, like the crux of this is knowing, and I mean truly, deeply knowing that your needs and your energy and your time and your preferences and your opinions, your convenience is just as valid as everybody else's. And being assertive is not about prioritizing your needs and your preferences and your opinions and your desires and your convenience over everybody else's. It's not railroading, it's not steamrolling anybody. It's not being aggressive, but we think it is, like we feel like it is. And I'm going to say especially for women, because we have been conditioned, we have been socially conditioned to be polite and to be peacekeepers and to be accommodating and to not be too opinionated. And, you know, depending kind of what era you grew up in, like that's sort of the cultural, that's the entrenched cultural message that women and girls have received. You know, smile, be polite, and make sure that everybody's happy. So it feels so awkward, and it feels like we're being aggressive if we say no, like if we put somebody else out in some way. It's not about putting anybody else out. It's about holding and valuing your own needs equal to other people's. So most of the time, if you're not setting boundaries, what you're being is passive. You're letting somebody else's needs and priorities and preferences and opinions and convenience override yours. You're subjugating your own and making theirs more important. Assertiveness is not about tipping that balance so that you become the aggressive one, or you become the dominant one, or you know, suddenly you're the more important one. It's about actually just bringing that balance back to here, where you can hold both, and you can actually acknowledge what the other person's need is. You can legitimately acknowledge, you know, what it is that they want and what they need, but at the same time, you don't subjugate your own. Like I can appreciate where you're at. Here's where I'm at. Like it's that sort of conversation. So it's not rude. It's not impolite. It's acknowledging and appreciating like where somebody else is and what their needs are. But it's also being very honest about what you're able to do, you know, to help them with that, or to, you know, to work with that, but also what you're not able to do. So you can be very polite about that. Like you can actually, that's a very kind conversation. That's a very compassionate conversation, and it doesn't dismiss or minimize your own needs at all. If you're still there, Karen, tell me if that's helpful to you, because you're the one who said initially that you feel really rude when you are assertive, like you feel like that's being rude. So yeah, so just remembering that it's not one or the other, it's equal. But at the end of the day, it still is likely to feel uncomfortable if it's not something that you've practiced, if it's not something that you've been, you know, typically ever done. Will take some practice, right? It will take practice. So the practice is what it really boils down to is being willing to manage that discomfort for a start. We are not great at that. If we feel guilty, like here's the thing, if you feel guilty, feeling guilty is not a reason to do anything. Like that's like, but what we do is we will do anything to get ourselves out of feeling uncomfortable in the moment. I mean, and that applies just to life generally, right? We do a whole lot of stuff to just give us an easy out of anything that feels difficult or painful or uncomfortable, and especially difficult conversations. We avoid them. We really are not. We're not comfortable with them. So it does require us to be willing to tolerate some of that discomfort, and hopefully that some of that discomfort is alleviated by the fact that if you can remember that you're not being rude, like if you can remember that you're not dismissing or diminishing somebody else's needs, you're just really honoring and respecting your own. It can also be really helpful to remember what your values are. So thinking about you and your life and what are the most important things to you. Because if you are always saying yes instead of saying no, then if you are always being the accommodating one or the flexible one or taking on more than what you really should, then allowing other people to mistreat you, then you're not aligning yourself and your actions with what is most important to you, with what your values are. So getting really clear about your value, whether that means time with your kids, whether that means time for your own self-care, whether that means time for you to just recharge your own batteries because you can't fill from an empty cup. We all know that saying as well. Whether it's because you need time to bloody watch Netflix, whatever it might be, right? But knowing what is important to you and what your values are, and this is the foundation of acceptance and commitment therapy, which is sort of the type of therapy that I have typically practiced. And this is the basis of like mindfulness and acceptance. It is knowing what is important to me, being very clear about my values, and then being willing to tolerate the discomfort that might arise as I act in accordance with those values. So that is the foundation of a authentic, purpose-driven, fulfilling, and meaningful life. Because the alternative is that we just continue doing what we do to avoid discomfort, and we are not in alignment with our values. We are resentful, stressed, depleted, exhausted, not the best person we can be for the people around us at all, even though it might feel like we're doing everything for everybody else. At the end of the day, we can't give to anybody else unless we are really protecting our own energy and our own space and really feeling that we're doing things because we genuinely want to do them, not just out of obligation or compliance or guilt. Like that is not a life well lived. That should not be the basis of a decision. That should not be a reason to do anything. So learning to tolerate discomfort is that's mindfulness. That's learning to take a breath, to pause. You'll feel all emotions in your body. You can allow them to be there, recognizing that that feeling's not going to kill you. Like if you feel a bit guilty, or if you feel a bit awkward, or if you feel a bit uncomfortable, chances are you're not going to die from it. So keep that in perspective. Remember what really matters to you. Prioritize those things, and then just be willing to take that action. Tiny actions. And the last thing that I would say, and then any questions I'll be here to answer. But the last thing I would say is when you slip up, then just be kind to yourself. So as you start to make any sort of change in your behavior, especially in your patterns of behavior with other people, there's going to be, you're not going to get it right all the time. You're always going to fall back into old patterns of behavior. So it's just catching yourself in those moments, just remembering what your commitment was, and just reminding yourself you could, and from a place of self-compassion, from a place of self-kindness, you were actually in a position to be able to review what happened, why it happened, how did I end up in that situation, what might I do differently next time, what might I say if I was put in that situation next time. Whereas if you just go down the old path of, self-recrimination or you just stay stuck in that place of resentment and blame and frustration towards the other person, well, then there's no space there. There's no space there for any sort of wise reflection. There's no space for reviewing and really thinking about what you might do differently. If you're just blaming yourself or blaming the other person, that is not a place from which any positive change can be made. So you want to get out of that space as quickly as possible. Be kind to yourself, acknowledge what's happened, and then and reflect, and maybe do some journaling, or think about what you might do differently next time. So you guys, so then it's just a case of practice. And you know what? It probably helps just to start with just really being clear. Like when I said at the beginning, like get clear about your boundaries, like just get really clear about where do you have trouble with boundaries. Like you might be very clear with your boundaries at work, but really not with your family. You might be very clear with your family, but really not with your partner. So just where do you have the most trouble with boundaries, and what's going on there? What are the thoughts and feelings that come up? What are the stories that you tell yourself if you think about being more assertive and being more clear about what your expectations? And also, what's the feeling that comes up, and are you willing to tolerate that in the service of having a much healthier and more balanced relationship? Because at the end of the day, that's the goal. At the end of the day, the goal is to have a more healthy and balanced relationship, and for you to be happier, and for other people to be very clear about their expectations of you. That's the foundation of a happy, healthy relationship. So I think that's it, you guys. I think that's all I had, unless you've got other questions or if I've missed anything. Also, just noticing too, when it comes to like noticing the slip-ups, as I said, it does go both ways as well. So also noticing if you have slipped up in terms of the line with other people's boundaries. Like if you have perhaps intentionally or unintentionally disrespected other people's boundaries. If you've got your nose into other people's stuff. If you're taking responsibility for other people's feelings. If you're trying to fix the issue for your partner, or if you're losing sleep at night because of somebody else's, emotional crisis, like that's all boundaries issues as well. So just, again, coming back, remembering that clear as kind, remembering that that's their responsibility, it's not yours. And the kindest thing that you can do is to maintain those boundaries and to let those people, take responsibility for their own stuff. So great. Yay, Laura. So you guys, that's it. That's it. If you've got no questions, then this sucker will be going up on the YouTubes, and every Tuesday the plan is that there will be a new video released. Now, down the bottom here somewhere, if you have not already subscribed to my 7-day happiness challenge, which is really the foundations of creating more positivity and joy and meaning in your life. It's a simple email a day from me every day for 7 days. The link to that is down below. CassDunn.com obviously is my website where you can find out all of the stuff about me, links to the podcast, the books, everything else. So I'm really, really looking forward to sharing a video here every week covering a different topic: motivation, goals, self-sabotage, anxiety, you name it, everything that will help you to have a happier and more successful life. That is my goal for you. And I'm excited. So I hope you'll subscribe and I hope you'll keep watching. And this has been fun. So do you have any good questions, reflections to find our main boundary issue areas? Questions, reflections. Melinda, I think some of those questions that I asked at the beginning, where do you have trouble saying no, where I can probably type some in the comments actually after we post this video. I had some like, am I trying to fix other people? That's obviously about other people's boundaries. Do I do favors that I resent? Like going into the feeling part of it, noticing the areas where I feel uncomfortable or resentful, or I have more difficulty saying no, or I constantly find myself replaying old patterns. Who are the people that trigger that sort of behavior? It's just doing a little bit of reflection and probably a bit of journaling about that, just noticing. It comes to paying attention, because we're so on autopilot all the time, and we find ourselves, before we even know it, we've slipped into this old pattern, and typically with probably the same people all the time. So as soon as you can start kind of shining a bit more of a spotlight on that and just catching yourself, then you can start to just really see where those patterns are. Like start to really see where the difficulties lie. Okay, you guys, that's it. I'm going to go. Somebody might be watching this back later and go, I don't want to hear all of this chit chat. So thank you all for joining me live. This has been really fun, and I will catch you same time next Tuesday. See you guys.